Rich Richard. He is 32, earns $62,000 a year, and looks completely ordinary from the outside. He drives a 10-year-old sedan. He brings lunch to work 3 days a week. He wears the same rotation of plain shirts. Nothing about Richard screams money, but here is what nobody around him realizes. Richard's net worth quietly crossed a line last year that changed everything about how he experiences daily life. Not because he got a promotion, not because he inherited anything, because his balance hit an invisible number that rewired his entire relationship with stress. Now meet poor Peter. Same age, same $62,000 salary, same apartment complex, actually, just 2 floors apart. Peter looks more successful on paper. Nicer car, better clothes, newer phone every year. But Peter lives with a constant low hum of financial anxiety that he cannot seem to shake no matter how many raises he collects. Same paycheck. 2 completely different realities. The difference between them is not income, and it never was. The difference is that Richard understood something about money that most people never learn. Your financial life does not improve in a smooth upward line. It explodes at 5 very specific moments, 5 invisible thresholds where everything resets at once. The way banks treat you resets, the way your own brain processes risk resets, the way your job feels on a Monday morning resets. And the distance between someone who understands these 5 levels and someone who does not is measured in hundreds of thousands of dollars over a lifetime. Today, I'm going to walk you through all 5 of those levels. By the end, you will know exactly which one you are standing on right now and what it will take to reach the next one. My name is Ivan, and this might be the most important financial map you ever see. Ask anyone how wealth works and they will describe a ramp. You earn a little more each year, you save a little more, you slowly climb. That picture is wrong. Wealth moves in steps, not slopes. You spend years on a flat stretch where nothing feels different. Then you cross one single threshold and the whole game lurches forward overnight. Economists call systems like this nonlinear. You probably just call it the frustrating reason your coworker on the same salary somehow feels twice as free as you do. The real danger sits on the flat stretches between the thresholds. On a plateau, you cannot feel progress happening, so you get restless. You cash out an investment too early, you buy something big to make yourself feel like you are moving forward, and every time you break the streak on a plateau, you reset your own clock back towards zero. The people who eventually win at this are not more talented than you. They simply understood that the boring middle of each level is where the entire reward gets built. So here are the 5 levels and what actually changes at each one. Level 1, $10,000. The breathing room reset. Nobody talks about this level, and that is exactly the problem. Everybody wants to discuss the $1 million mark. Almost nobody teaches you how to escape the first 10,000. Yet this is where most adults in the country are stuck right now. The Federal Reserve published data showing that roughly 6 in 10 Americans could not cover a $1,000 emergency from savings. Sit with that for a moment. 6 in 10. That is not a character flaw. That is the gravity of level 0 pulling people back down before they ever start climbing. Below $10,000, every surprise bill becomes a crisis. A flat tire turns into a credit card balance. A dentist visit becomes 3 months of quiet stress. When you have $400 to your name, you do not own your money. Your emergencies own you instead. Watch what happens when both Richard and Peter get hit with an $800 car repair on the same Tuesday. Richard pays it from his buffer account and forgets about it by dinner. Peter puts it on a credit card at 24% interest. That same $800 repair quietly cost Peter closer to $1,000 by the time the balance is finally gone. Same event, same salary, completely different outcomes. And this pattern repeats with every single surprise life throws at them. Here is what $10,000 actually buys you. It is not about the number. It is about the silence. Researchers have a name for the mental fog that comes with being broke. They call it scarcity mindset. Studies show it measurably lowers your decision quality. When you are financially stressed, you literally think worse through no fault of your own. $10,000 is the moment that fog lifts. Your brain stops running a background panic loop and starts thinking clearly for the first time. The math to get there is simple. Set aside $800 a month and you cross $10,000 in just over a year. Most people could find that $800 somewhere in their spending. They just never give it a chance to pile up. So rule number 1 for this level, you are not investing yet. Forget the stock tips and the crypto calls. At level 1, your only job is to build a wall between yourself and chaos. People who chase hot investments before they have a cash buffer almost always get forced to sell at the worst possible moment when a surprise bill lands. Richard built the wall first. Peter tried to skip straight to investing with nothing underneath. The first time his portfolio dropped and an emergency hit at the same time, Peter panicked, sold at a loss. The buffer is boring. Nobody brags about their emergency fund at a party. But the buffer is the foundation that every single level above it stands on. Skip it and everything stays wobbly forever. And here is something about level 1 that surprises almost everyone. The feeling of crossing it is completely out of proportion to the amount. $10,000 is not life-changing money by any measure. You cannot retire on it. You cannot buy a house with it. But the emotional shift it creates is enormous. People who cross this line describe the same experience over and over. They say the background noise finally stopped. They stopped checking their bank balance 3 times a day. They stopped lying awake running emergency scenarios in their head. That silence alone is worth every boring month it took to get there. Level 2, $100,000. The momentum reset. This is the level that even billionaires admit is the hardest to reach. Charlie Munger, Warren Buffett's late business partner, put it as bluntly as anyone ever has. He said the first 100,000 is a painful grind. He told people to get there however they possibly can because after that point, you can finally ease up. Think about why the first 100,000 would be harder than the second. The answer is the engine. At the start, your own savings do all of the heavy lifting. Your money contributes almost nothing in returns. A few thousand invested at 7% earns you a couple $100 a year. That is a rounding error you would not even notice. But once you cross 100,000, a normal market year can add $7,000 or $8,000 all on its own. That is like having an invisible coworker putting in a full year of labor just for your benefit. And that coworker never takes a day off, never calls in sick, never quits. Below 100,000, you are pushing a boulder uphill alone. Above 100,000, the boulder starts rolling forward on its own momentum while you push. Here is the trap that nobody warns you about though. The middle of level 2 is the longest, flattest, most boring plateau of your entire financial life. It can drag on for years where it feels like absolutely nothing is happening. And this is exactly where Peter quit. He climbed all the way to 42,000, felt no excitement, got impatient, and bought a brand new truck he did not need. Richard just stayed boring. He kept feeding the same account straight through the silence, completely ignoring the plateau. 3 years later, Richard crossed 100,000. Peter was restarting from almost nothing with a truck payment dragging him backward. Run the numbers on what Peter actually gave up. Richard's 100,000, left completely alone for 30 years at 7% average returns, grows into more than $760,000. Peter's truck became a memory, a pile of oil changes, and eventually a smaller, older truck. That is the real cost of quitting on a plateau. Most people quit on this one. The plateau of level 2 is where the financial dream quietly goes to die for the majority of working adults. Level 3, $500,000. The options reset. This is the level that almost nobody talks about, and it might be the most psychologically important one of all. $500,000 is the halfway point between 0 and $1 million, obviously, but something far more interesting happens here than just hitting a number. At $500,000 invested at 7%, your money generates roughly $35,000 a year on its own. For a lot of households, that is close to a second full income appearing without anyone lifting a finger. And the moment that happens, your relationship with your job completely changes. Below $500,000, you need your job. You might like it, you might hate it, but you need it. Above $500,000, you still probably work, but something shifts inside you. You walk into negotiations differently. You respond to a bad boss differently. You think about career risks differently. Psychologists call this walk-away power, and it changes everything about how you carry yourself at work. Richard felt this shift the day his portfolio crossed the $500,000 line. He did not quit his job. He actually likes what he does. But the next time his manager pushed an unreasonable deadline, Richard pushed back calmly and clearly because he knew he did not need to be afraid. Peter, still stuck below level 2, swallowed the same demand in silence because he could not afford to make waves. There is a financial planning concept that makes this level even more interesting. At $500,000, you are roughly 10 to 12 years of normal compounding away from $1 million, assuming you add nothing else and the market averages its historical return. That means the hardest climbing is already behind you. The math is doing most of the remaining work. You just have to stay out of your own way. And here is the part about level 3 that surprises people who reach it. The difference between 490,000 and 500,000 is almost nothing in dollar terms. But the psychological difference is massive. There is something about crossing that halfway marker that rewires how you think about the finish line. Below it, $1 million feels like a fantasy. Above it, $1 million starts to feel like an inevitability. And that shift in expectation quietly changes your behavior. You stop chasing shortcuts and you stop envying people ahead of you because you can finally see the path clearly enough to trust it. Peter never got anywhere near this moment. He is still in the cycle of saving a little, getting impatient, spending it, and starting over. He has completed that loop 4 times in the last decade. Each time something shiny pulls him off course before the compounding ever gets a chance to work. Here's another thing that shifts at 500,000. Your identity starts to change. Below this level, you think of yourself as someone who is trying to save money. Above it, you quietly start thinking of yourself as someone who has money. That distinction sounds small, but it changes the decisions you make every single day. Richard stopped thinking of himself as a saver somewhere around this point. He started thinking of himself as a steward. He was not scraping together dollars anymore. He was directing capital, and that shift in self-image made him more careful, not less. He spent less impulsively because he finally had something real to protect. And that self-reinforcing loop, where having more makes you want to keep more, is the secret engine of level 3. It is the point where discipline stops being something you force and starts being something you feel. If you have been watching this and feeling like you are stuck somewhere between these levels, that is completely normal. These transitions are hard, precisely because the plateaus feel endless while you are living through them. One thing that actually helps is getting clear on where you stand today and what your specific next target looks like. I built something that does exactly that. There is a link in the description below. It is a short quiz that asks a few questions about your situation and maps out a plan tailored to your numbers. Takes about 2 minutes. If you are curious, try it after this video. Level 4, $1 million. The Freedom Reset. This is the level everyone fantasizes about and almost everyone completely misunderstands. $1 million does not make you rich. Let me say that one more time so it actually lands. $1 million does not make you rich. What it actually makes you is optional. There is a well-known guideline in personal finance called the 4% rule. It says you can withdraw roughly 4% of your invested portfolio each year and your money should still last about 30 years. 4% of $1 million is $40,000 a year. Read that slowly. At $1 million invested, your money can produce around $40,000 annually while you do absolutely nothing. For a huge percentage of households, that is a real livable salary appearing entirely on its own. And that is a level 4 reset in a single sentence. Work stops being something you are forced to do. It quietly becomes something you choose to do instead. You do not even have to quit your job to feel this shift. The entire point is that your job transforms from a life sentence into a daily decision. You stay because you want to, or you leave because you finally can. The research on this has even shifted recently in your favor. The creator of the 4% rule has updated his own number based on newer data. His more recent work suggests that current conditions might safely support withdrawals closer to 4.5% or even 5%. At 5%, that same million generates $50,000 a year. But here's the most important warning in this entire video. The biggest danger at level 4 is not running out of money. The biggest danger is you. The single greatest threat to $1 million portfolio is the person who owns it panicking and selling everything during a market crash. The market will drop sometimes. It always has and it always will. The people who lose are the ones who flinch and sell at the bottom. Richard, if he stays the course, is projected to reach this level somewhere around age 53. He will arrive there with the emotional discipline he built during all those boring plateaus on the levels below. Peter, still trading hours for dollars with no real end in sight, will watch from 2 floors down. And this is the part most people miss entirely. The patience Richard built on the plateau of level 2 is the exact same patience that will keep him from panic selling at level 4. The levels are not just financial milestones, they are training grounds for the next challenge. Level 5, $5 million, the generational reset. Now, we reach the level that almost nobody discusses with any honesty. For decades, $1 million was a cultural definition of being rich. That definition is quietly outdated. With people living longer and costs climbing every year, many financial planners now say you need closer to $5 million to feel truly and permanently secure. In practical terms, $5 million is the new $1 million. Here's what actually changes at this level. At a 4% withdrawal, $5 million produces $200,000 a year. That is not survival money. That is comfortable upper middle class spending generated entirely by your assets, year after year, potentially forever. And at this level, the shift is far more psychological than financial. Below 5 million, you still think in terms of replacing your own salary. At 5 million, you start thinking in terms of generations. Your money now officially outlives you. The question quietly changes from will I personally be okay to what do I want this money to build after I'm gone. But honesty is the whole point of this channel, so here is the fair truth. 5 million is extremely difficult to reach on a normal salary alone. To realistically get here, almost everyone needs one of three things: a business that generates equity value, an ownership stake in something that grows, or a solid 30 plus years of relentless uninterrupted compounding. This is the level where being an owner usually beats being a pure saver. And this is also exactly where lifestyle creep becomes a silent killer of freedom. People who reach 5 million and then inflate their spending to match end up feeling poorer in real freedom than someone sitting at 1 million who lives simply and sleeps well every night. More money does not automatically mean more freedom. How you choose to hold it decides that. Now step back and look at all 5 levels together because there is a pattern hiding in plain sight. Each level comes with a completely different enemy you have to defeat. At the bottom, the enemy is chaos. Then the enemy becomes patience. Then the enemy becomes fear of change. Then the enemy becomes panic. And finally, the enemy becomes your own appetite. Beat all 5 of those. Enemies in order, and the numbers honestly handle themselves. Here is something else that nobody tells you about climbing these 5 levels. The world starts treating you differently long before you feel rich. At level 1, with chaos behind you, the banks barely notice you exist. You pay the highest interest rates and the most fees. Being broke is expensive in ways that are almost hard to believe. And that is the trap nobody warns you about early enough. At level 2, around 100,000, the phone calls start. Your bank suddenly offers you a better credit card, a lower mortgage rate, a personal banker. You did nothing to earn this except stop being a liability. At level 3, around 500,000, lenders compete for you. The same loan that cost Peter 24% interest costs Richard 6%. Money flows toward people who already have it. That is not a conspiracy. That is simply how risk gets priced. At level 4, the doors swing wide open. Opportunities that are invisible at lower levels suddenly appear because you have the capital to walk through them. At level 5, you stop borrowing money to buy things and start borrowing money to build things. The wealthy use cheap debt as a tool. Everyone below them uses expensive debt as a crutch. Same product, completely opposite outcome. Each level does not just change your balance, it changes the price of every financial product you touch. Let me give you the one practical move for each level because understanding the map is useless without knowing your next step on it. At level 1, automate $800 a month into a separate account you do not touch. Do not negotiate with yourself about it. Make the wall build itself while you sleep. At level 2, do absolutely nothing exciting. Keep feeding the same account through every boring month and every scary headline. Your only job at this stage is to not interrupt the compounding. The temptation to buy something big will be constant. Ignore it. At level 3, start paying attention to your career leverage. You have walkaway power now even if you have never used it. Practice saying no to things that waste your time and yes to things that grow your value. Your money is working. Make sure you are working smarter alongside it. At level 4, shift your focus from building wealth to protecting it. One panicked sell during a market crash can erase an entire decade of patience. Your biggest job is emotional. Stay seated when everyone else is running for the exits. At level 5, your job becomes managing your own appetite. Decide what enough looks like before more money quietly redefines it for you. Notice the shape of that list. At the bottom, the work is purely financial. At the top, the work is entirely emotional. The further you climb, the more the battle moves from your bank account into your own head. And this is exactly why people who try to skip levels almost always fall back down. The plateau is not wasted time. The plateau is the training ground. Now here is the part that changes how you see this entire map. We have been talking about 5 levels of net worth this whole time, but the levels were never really about money at all. Look carefully at what actually reset at each stage. At 10,000, the thing that changed was your stress. At 100,000, the thing that changed was who was doing the work, you or your money. At 500,000, the thing that changed was your leverage in the world. At 1 million, the thing that changed was whether your job was a free choice. At 5 million, the thing that changed was your time horizon, stretching from your own lifetime out to your legacy. The dollar amounts were never the real point. They were just price tags hanging on 5 completely different kinds of freedom. And once you truly see that, something surprising falls out of it. The level that matters most sits right at the bottom, the 10,000, because every single level above it is built directly on the buffer you create right at the very start. The obsession is always aimed at the million, and the 10,000 gets completely ignored. People stand there staring up at the top of the staircase while tripping over the first step. One more thing that almost everyone gets backwards: people assume the jump from 1 million to 5 million is the hardest climb. It is actually one of the easier ones because by then your money is doing most of the work. A million compounding at 7% doubles in roughly a decade without a single extra deposit. The truly brutal climb is always the one you are standing on right now. The smallest balance with the loudest doubts. Every person at level 5 was once terrified at level 1. The only thing that separated them from the crowd was that they kept walking when the road went flat. So here is the one line I want you to take away from this. You do not buy your freedom in one single purchase. You buy it across 5 levels. And the first one is the only level you fully control. The first 10,000 is the hardest level psychologically, and yet it is the cheapest one financially. After that first wall is built, the math does almost all of the lifting for you. The people who win this game are not the ones who earn the most. They are simply the ones who refuse to quit on the boring plateau between the levels. Rich Richard and Poor Peter earned the exact same paycheck for 10 straight years. Richard is now standing comfortably on level 4. Peter is still circling around level 1. Same income, same starting point. The only real difference between them was that one understood the map and the other one never even knew it existed. You are standing on one of these 5 levels right now. Maybe you are at the very bottom fighting chaos, trying hard to build that first wall. Maybe you are deep inside the plateau of level 2, quietly wondering if the math will ever actually kick in. I promise you it will. Or maybe you are closer to the top than you have ever let yourself believe. Wherever you are standing, your next move is exactly the same. Do not quit on the plateau. The plateau is where your entire reward is being built, brick by boring brick.